to write way bigger and it takes me a lot longer. All right, so I just want you to understand what you have to do. You should be able to do it by yourself. So let me walk you through a situation. I'm going to show you how this works, okay? And then we're going to take a bit of a break, and then we're going to come back and pound through the rest of this, and I'm going to actually show you a little bit more on how to do this, okay? So let's say that I've got a house on 22nd Street in Brandon, and I decide that there's a rock that's always bothered me, great big rock in the front yard. And I decide that I am going to get some dynamite, go put it underneath the rock, go around the back, hit the button, and blow that rock up and get rid of it. Okay? So, could a reasonable person in the position of the defendant foresee that if they blow up a rock on 22nd Street on a Friday afternoon, somebody could get harmed? How do you know that?
This is dynamite in the rock in a place that is full of people.
All right, so it could blow up and hit people. So is it foreseeable that somebody could get hurt? What would a reasonable person do?
Not all the...
That can be the answer. But what if I need to get rid of the rock?
They would have called a trouble.
I could have called a professional.
Yes.
I could have not done it. I could have warned people. I could have put up a blast barricade. How many of those did I do? None. Every choice that I do not make that a reasonable person would have made is a different negligence. So when I hit that thing, I'm not just negligent for one thing. I'm actually negligent for about 20 or 30 things. And how many does someone who's hurt have to prove? Just one. Right? They just have to show one thing. I'm reminded at this point always in the course about the IRA, which is the Irish Republican Army. And they were very much against the British rule in Ireland. And it was terrible what they did there. They would shoot, Protestants and there was these wars, and they would just kill people. And at one point in time, they had this elaborate plan, and they were going to kill the Queen. And they were close. They almost got her. But they missed. And they sent her a note. And what it said was, remember, we only have to be lucky once. You have to be lucky every minute of every day for the rest of your life. And it's the same for you folks. It's the same for negligence. It's not good enough that today you're careful. Right? If tomorrow you're not. Or that you're careful in some ways, but not in others. Because any failing to act reasonably is a basis for negligence. Do you understand that? So, let's just say that the post person was walking down and delivering the mail, the mail. No, how can they delivering the post? We don't want to call it mail, because that's sexist, right? And the post person, we're going to call it, what are we going to call it? Shit. What? The post. You're delivering the post, okay? That may have, anyway. So, delivering the post, and she's walking along, and I blow up the rock, and a chunk of rock comes and hits her in the arm, and breaks her arm, and she's got to be in the hospital for a month. So if those are the facts, and I'd have to give them all to you at one point in time, you would go through and you would write down, would a reasonable person in the position of the defendant foresee that if they blow up a rock on 22nd Street on a Friday afternoon, someone could be harmed? And then I'm going to show you how to answer this, okay? And you know what the answer is, which is yeah, it's foreseeable. Did I fail to act reasonably? What would a reasonable person do? Barricade, I didn't. Or not do it. Or hire a professional. Any of those. It doesn't matter which one. They're all good. Right? Did I fail to act reasonably?
Yes.
Yeah. Was there harm?
Yes.
Yeah, the blowing up of her arm, causing the damage, she's got to go hospital, is going to be physical and probably financial loss. Right?
Can't work.
Yeah. So if she sues me for negligence based on these three elements, I haven't taught you the fourth one yet, will she win? Right? For sure. Okay, let's go to her husband. Her husband used to be able to sit at home and eat chocolates and watch soap operas. But because his wife has in the hospital and can't work, he's got to get off his lazy duff and go to work and get a job for that whole month. he sues me too. Does he win?
Yes.
Let's walk through. Just answer the questions. Would a reasonable person in the position of the defendant foresee that if you blow up a rock on 22nd Street, someone could get harmed?
Yes.
Yeah. What would a reasonable person do? Not blow it up. Did I? Yes. Did I fail to act reasonably? Yeah. Was he harmed?
Yes.
I wouldn't qualify that as harm.
Why not? If you were going to go on a vacation to, where would you go, by the way?
The northern tip of the Yucatan Peninsula.
Yeah, the Yutan. My favorite, I've never been there. The Yutan Peninsula, right? So you're going to go there, right? But you can't. You've got to go break these rocks instead. Would you say there's no harm here?
No,
Would you say there's no harm? Or is that harm?
that's harm.
Yeah. Lifestyle change can be a harm, right? It's a mental, it's a physical. You got to put out effort. That would be a harm. So that would be a harm. So would he be able to sue me too?
Yes.
So they've got a kid. The kid is 12 years old and a very, very good piano player. And I'm going to give you a fact, and I want you to remember something. You cannot argue with the facts. You cannot say, how would you prove it? This is what a court would find. You've got to accept that as being the finding of the court. And that kid was going to go in a piano competition on that weekend, and he would have won it, and he would have gotten a $1,000 prize. Okay? He's the best. He always wins. He would win that one. Clearly he was going to win. But because his mom's in the hospital and his dad has to get off his lazy duff and go to work, no one is there to take him to the piano competition. And as a result of that, he can't go to it, and he doesn't win the $1,000. Can he successfully sue me for negligence too?
Yes.
Yes.
Would a reasonable person position fail to see that if they blow up a rock 26 cents on my yard? Yeah. Would that fail to act reasonably? Yeah, I failed to act reasonably. Was there loss? Yeah, the kid lost $1,000. He can sue me too. So let's just say that on Monday, he's walking to school. He's on his way to school. And he's all pissed off because he was going to win that $1,000 and he was going to buy a bag of dope and impress Jane with this dope and she was going to give him a big kiss. He knew that this was all happening, but because his mom's in the hospital and his dad can't take him to work, he doesn't win the $1,000, he can't buy his bag of dope. And as a result of that, he's all pissed off and he's on his way to school thinking about how bad it's going to be his life without Jane for all of these things, that everything was going to work out so well, 12 years old. And he's really mad and he sees a dog. And he hoofs the dog, gives it a good boot, and breaks the poor little dog's arm. Leg. So the question isn't, can the dog sue you? Okay, that's a dumb question. But there's a vet bill for $2,700, and the question is, can the owners of the dog sue me?
No.
Why not? Can you foresee that someone can get hurt?
Yes.
Yeah. Did I fail to act reasonably?
Yeah.
Were they harmed?
Not by
It's
your
not
decision.
directly called that.
Why not? Isn't there a straight connection between the events?
There's someone else's
No.
decision.
It's someone else's decision.
How is it someone else's decision?
It's the decision of the kid to kick the dog.
But he's kicking it because he's pissed off.
Okay, but it's his decision.
Mental, he was have some loss mentally.
All right, good. So this last element is called proximate causation. Proximate. Starts with a P. Doesn't start with an A. Proximate causation. What this is dealing with is, did this choice cause that harm in a reasonably connected way? So, does my choice to blow up the rock cause the husband in a reasonably connected way?
Yes.
Does it cause the kid to lose his money in a reasonably connected way? Does it cause the dog to be damaged in a reasonably connected way? No. That's probably going too far because the kid's a little rat bastard, right? And I didn't raise the damn kid to do that, right? I raised my own damn kids to do that. So there's not a close enough connection, because although negligence does require causation, it can't be any causation. Because if you think about this, what if the husband and wife get in an argument about the vet bill? Right? Did I cause that too? And if they separate, and the husband has to go live on the street because he's got nowhere to stay, and then he freezes his toes, and they fall. Can he get me? Like, at what point does it stop? Right? This is the butterfly effect, right? Some of you will recognize that. The butterfly flaps its wings, and next thing you know, 7 people die. Well, it wasn't next, but it took a while. But this is the butterfly effect. Is that there is a chain of reaction. And in order to be able to sue, you have to be in that chain. Right? You have to have that connection. But there's a point in which a court will say, it's too far down the chain, and they will cut it off. And that's what proximate causation deals with. So proximate causation is effectively connecting this choice with the harm. Let me give you one more example before I take a break, okay? Can I have your name again? Shanine? Shanine? Niece. Shanice. Okay, Shanice. I almost got it. I got it better the first time. All right, Shanice, right? So let's go through the example again about me driving you home. Remember that? So let's just add a little fact. Shanice gets to her house, she steps out of the car, and there's ice, and she slips and falls and cracks her head. Okay, do you understand that? So, let's go through that whole thing. Would a reasonable person, position offender, foresee that if they drive like a moron, somebody could get hurt?
Yes.
Yes. And did I drive like a moron? Yeah. Did I fail to act reasonably? What would a reasonable person do? Not drive like that. Was Shanice harmed?
Yes.
She fell and cracked her head. Is that harm?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now the question is that harm of cracking your head caused by my failing to drive reasonably?
No.
Unless you can show that somehow, because of the way I drove, she got out of. But why did she slip and fall?
Laziness?
Because there's ice. It's slippery, right? Did my driving cause the ice? No. So if she sued me for that, you would actually prove 1, 2, 3, but not 4. Right? Now, just hold it for a second. Because people have a tendency with torts, and especially negligence, to jump. This is why you really need your focus point. So you want this to actually say, that's one of the reasons I make you put it right in here. We're talking about driving like a moron. Would a reasonable person foresee to drive like a moron? What did I fail to do? I failed to drive reasonably. I drove like a moron. Was she hurt? Yes. Did my driving like a moron cause it? And the answer is no. No negligence there. I could be negligent because of where I chose to stop. But that's not the choice that we were dealing with. You cannot jump from one choice to another in the middle of negligence. It's easy to do. I call it jumping torts. You started here and you ended there. Okay? You've got to follow that through the entire way. Go ahead.
What if your driving made her dizzy?
Well, there'd have to be facts about that. I would have to, if I'm expecting you to come to the conclusion that it's connected, I've got to give you facts that allow you to connect it. So if I just say, and she stepped out of her car, it was slippery, she fell and hit her head, no facts. Right? So you can't make the connection on the facts that you're given. You're allowed to make reasonable interpretations on the facts, but is it reasonable to say that she would be dizzy? I wouldn't think so. This is one of the reasons I have to see what you've done on the exam, because if you've added a fact that I wouldn't have put there and the whole thing makes sense, I'm not testing your facts. I'm testing your knowledge of the law. And if it all works, I can sometimes accept that as being a valid answer. And that's what we need to do. Manuel, I have to practice.
What's the difference between those three elements, and when should we use each?
You use them all. As soon as you've identified this, an action that could be a tort, you will be writing down 1, 2, 3, and 4. Always.
Can you be more specific with the proximate causation with another example? Like for me, it's not clear what is proximate causation yet.
Okay. Divide it into two parts. Okay? The first part is, are they connected at all?
Okay.
Is there a chain that takes you from that action to that loss? So with the kid kicking the dogs, I would say it is connected. Right? It's connected.
Okay.
The next question is it far enough down the line? Some of you raised something, okay, his choice and something like that. Normally, if there's any intervening factor or significant thing that caused that, it's too far down the line. So an intervening factor would be the kid's a bad kid, right? And that's a significant reason why. He didn't have to kick the dog. It's not just because of this. It's also because he's bad, right? So when we get to a point in which there's something else that's sort of a major contributor, it's too far down the line. But I will tell you, folks, that in the example I gave you, the postwoman could sue, their husband could sue, all of their kids could sue, their parents who go and see the poor daughter traumatized in the hospital could sue, the post office could sue for the loss of the employee and they've got to hire someone else and pay. Like the amount of people that could sue over that one thing are fairly broad. And this is how negligence is so deadly. Is that one small mistake spreads like, a quart of milk on the prairies. It just goes forever, right? It just keeps on hitting people. And if you've got a bigger event, like, let's just say the Coke plant reduces some toxins out in the thing, and we all go, and we're coughing for the next 5 years, right? Holy, right? Everyone who's coughing, all of their family gets to sue, all of their employers. How much is that worth? This is why negligence is so important, because it's the tort that costs. And it costs both in terms of the harm and in terms of the extent of harm that happens as a result of it. And the problem is, we can't do a damn thing about it. Except be a hell of a lot more careful than most of us usually are. Right? All right, I'd like you to take a 5-minute break, please. We still have a fair amount to do. Because I have to show you. Sometimes extremely difficult for students to sometimes get their head around this course. And I keep seeing aspects of that difficulty raising itself. Because normally in a class, what happens is I show you how to answer the question. And then we both agree on the answer if you've done it right. Do you understand that? That does not happen in this course. There isn't a right answer. What there is a right question. So students will sometimes say, what's the value of that? Right? What's the value of that? Oh yeah, we can ask the questions, we don't know what the answer is. Well, what I'm trying to train you to do is to understand how this works. And it's not about being a judge. You're never going to be a judge, are you? I doubt it. Okay, maybe some of you. Okay, remember me then. When you started to become a judge. But most of you are never going to be a judge. So how do you use this information? I'm trying to teach you how to address situations in a real world. And understanding how it works and the things that you are going to be asked are extremely important in understanding that. So what I'm trying to do is give you spider senses. You may not know what the answer is going to be, but there could be a question here, right? So let me ask you this, okay? Let's just say that you're managing a hotel, okay? So a business situation. This is me answering your question. There's a business situation, okay? And there's a hotel. And you look out at a pathway coming in, and you go, oh, that's pretty icy out there. Maybe I'll send someone out in a few hours because everyone seems pretty busy. maybe I'll send some people out in a couple hours, or maybe tomorrow, and chip away that ice or throw some salt on it. Well, folks, is that a smart choice based on what you've learned here? Because what are you going to get sued for?
Negligence.
And you don't even know whether it's going to happen, right? You just know the ice is there. But can a reasonable person foresee that if they don't clean the ice up, somebody could get hurt? What would a reasonable hotel do? Clean the ice. And as soon as someone gets harmed, Granny Smith is walking along, carrying her apples, and that was my little joke today, and trips and falls and breaks her hip. Is she harmed?
Yes.
And is the choice to not clean up that ice the reason she got harmed? She's got you. So it's not trying to predict what the outcome is going to be. It's trying to understand that you need to do something here, and you're not going to wait till tomorrow if you understand the questions even, right? And this is what I mean by spider sense. You'll start to get the idea. Should I call this person a no good hole? They seem to be a bit of, maybe I should keep my mouth shut because I know that could get me in trouble, right? That's what I'm trying to do, is get you to the point where you can make good choices. So the other question I was asked was the idea of, so what happens if there's somebody who needs medication and they're unable to give it to themselves and they're in dire straits. They're going to die or they're going to get very sick, and they ask you to give it to them and then you screw it up. Can you get sued? Yeah, you can get sued. That isn't the question, though. The question is, will they win? So, by understanding, I can't tell you the answer to that. Right? I can't tell you whether they will win. It is so fact-dependent. And there's too many little facts that are missing. But here's what the questions will be. Would a reasonable person in the position of the defendant foresee that if they give medication when they're not trained to do so, somebody could get hurt? If you give someone an injection, you don't know how to give them an injection. Can you foresee that they could get hurt? This is the problem one. If they're going to die if you don't, and you do anyways, is that unreasonable? That. Should you give an injection when you don't know how to do it? When if you don't do it, they're going to die, but you don't know how to do it? Right? Is it unreasonable? I don't know the answer to that, folks. There isn't an answer to it. There's a question. And you could be successfully sued depending on the answer to that question. Whoever the judge decides to answer that. You should keep your hands free. You know, is that a valid thing to say? If you don't know how to do it, you shouldn't have tried. Is that a valid thing? You are unreasonable to try when you didn't know how to do it. Can you see the validity to that? And I'll ask you if you agree with it. Okay? Can you at least see that that's a way a judge could go? If you didn't know what you're doing, you shouldn't have tried. Right? Because you could do a lot of harm. And the other argument is, if they're going to be died anyways, shouldn't you have tried? Right? Or maybe you should have waited for somebody else who knew what they were doing. Or maybe you should have called a doctor. Or maybe you should have phoned someone to get help before you did it. Could any of these be the basis, a choice that could lead to negligence? Absolutely. So could you be sued? Yep. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. This is one of the reasons why in some areas, Manitoba does not have this. There's something called the Good Samaritan Law. And the Good Samaritan Law basically says, if you're trying to help somebody and you screw it up, you can't be sued. That's called the Good Samaritan Law. That's what it means. And it's a dangerous thing to implement, right? Because if we say, you can do whatever you want if you're trying to help somebody, no matter how stupid you are, and you can't get sued, is that a bad thing? You know, along comes a drunk moron and goes, I can help you, and I can't get sued because of that thing, right? Here, take these pills, you need them. I found them on the ground here, right? The dog puked them up. I mean, all of that would fall underneath it. So it's a very dangerous law because it means people aren't responsible for their choices anymore. But on the other hand, If they say, well, because I'm responsible, I'm just walking away because I don't want to have to get my ass sued, that's bad too. So this is a situation which there's no right answer. What you need to do is ask the right questions. And in this course, if I gave you something like that, you must come to an answer based on what you think. And that's going to be as good as anybody else's. So that question, this, would a reasonable person give it? Can they foresee it? That's going to be yes. Did they fail to act reasonably? That's an iffy. You could go yes, you could go no. Was there harm? Well, presuming there's harm, because otherwise why are they suing you, right? And if you hadn't given them the injection, would they still have been hurt? Well, probably, but they may have been hurt another way if you hadn't. But that harm that they suffered is because of what you did. Then they have 3 of the 4 for sure. The question is, were you unreasonable? And that would be very fact dependent. What else could you have done? How likely was the harm? Was it inevitable in any event? Were you at least trying something better than nothing? Can't answer that. You'd have to have such specific facts. Understand that? So you got to understand what we're trying to do. We're trying to have you understand how this works so that when you get out in the real world, you can understand what can get you in trouble and the types of things that could prevent it by knowing what the questions are and how you can change those facts so that the questions aren't answered in a bad way for you. Clean the ice. All right. This is probably one of the more difficult things that you have to show. How do you prove this? This is a kind of a hard thing to prove. How do you prove that it's foreseeable? Like some things are foreseeable. Most things are foreseeable. So, if I go back to Tia and the flaming markers. Okay, I want you to imagine this. So I'm juggling these flaming markers. I'm not being careful. I'm making sure that Manuel is watching me. Right? And I trip on this and they go over her head. Okay? So those are your facts. And you're dealing with that on an exam. And you have to show this. And what is this answer worth? If that's all you write, what's it worth?
No.
It's worth nothing. What if you answer, what's that worth? The same. Nothing. This as a bare answer and this as a bare answer are both useless because I don't know what you've done. So, tell me something. Let's go to just what your bare answer would be. If I was juggling flaming markers and you're addressing that question, and I let Tia's hair on fire, and you had to deal with the foreseeability issue, is it foreseeable or not? Just tell me yes or no.
Yes.
So you know what the answer is. My question is, how did you get there? Right? How you can't just grab a letter out of your brain and have it come. You have thought this through and come to that conclusion. And for me to mark what you've done, I have to kind of see what you've done. So how do you know that? How do you know it's foreseeable? Not everything's foreseeable.
It's not safe to walk with things on flame in the middle of people.
So I'm going to repeat what you said a little louder. It's a good answer. She's saying it's not safe to walk with flaming things in the middle of people. Right? And that's a good start. So I'm going to show you how to answer this. And I'm going to do it very, very carefully and fully. I don't necessarily require you to do this well, but you've got to at least show me something, okay? So, the right way to answer this, to show that a reasonable person would foresee it, a good way to start is to start with these 2 words. And what you want to do is connect the choice with the harm through obvious statements. Everyone knows that flaming markers can cause fires. Is that true? And everyone knows that if you don't watch where you're going, you could trip. And if you trip when you're juggling flaming markers, the flaming markers could go anywhere. And since they could go anywhere, they could land on a person. And if they land on a person and they're flaming, they could ignite their hair, their clothing, and everything else. So, if you're not careful when juggling flaming markers, and this is important, it is foreseeable that somebody could get hurt. I want to see that. So, what you're doing, this is the test. And you're answering your reasoning. What went on in your head? You're going to connect the choice based on it's foreseeable because everyone would be able to foresee this. That's the reasonable person would be able to see it. Everyone would. Every reasonable person would. So you start with everyone knows and you can connect that. That's what you need to do. And you're showing that it's foreseeable that somebody could get hurt. And that's one of the hardest parts about negligence, is showing why it's foreseeable. And again, I don't expect you necessarily to do it well, but you have to at least try to show how come people would be able to foresee that choice could lead to harm. By showing a sequence. That they start fires, that you could trip, that if you trip, they could go anywhere. If they go anywhere, they could land on someone. If they land on someone and they're lighted, it could light their clothing or their hair or anything else on fire. So it's foreseeable that if you're not careful when you're juggling the flaming markers, someone could get hurt. And you got to end with that foreseeability. Okay? Because I need to make sure that you actually are addressing this question. So I do want to kind of see it in your answer. The next part is pretty easy. Did the defendant fail to act reasonably? Well, you prove that by showing what would a reasonable person have done. So what would a reasonable person have done?
Not done it.
Not done it. That's often the answer. Yeah, a reasonable person would not juggle flaming markers. Any other choices that a reasonable person might have done that I didn't do? How could I have done it more reasonably?
Juggle them in a safer environment.
That's too general. What could I have done?
Stay in the one location.
Yeah, stay at the front away from the people. Those are separate choices. Doing it at all and things. I don't care which one you pick. They're a negligent two ways at least. Okay? So if we do it as a reasonable person, would have stayed a safe distance away. I think that's a given, okay? What did I do? Murray walked close to people with the markers. And you guys know that the 3 dots means therefore? Therefore, Murray failed to act reasonably. You just proved 2 of these. When we get to this next one, the test isn't built into this, so we need to give the test, okay? This is the test for this. This is the test for this, if you deal with that part. Did they fail to act reasonably? So, in number 3, you'll put harm means physical, emotional, property, financial loss. Alright, so there's your test. What loss was there? Tia was burned on her hair and scalp. That would be physical loss. So there's loss. That would be what you would write down there. Do you see that? Okay? And then the last one is you have to show that this choice. So the choice that we picked here is not staying a safe distance away. If I had stayed a safe distance away, would Tia have still been burned? No. That's a reasonable conclusion on the facts. And therefore, my choice was a proximate cause to her harm. See that? That, boys and girls, is how you do negligence. So can I have your name?
But
Ben. Go ahead.
can you explain, like, when you introduce negligence, you introduce the four conditions, or four elements, and they're all useless, and then explain them all.
These words are textbook words, Ben, okay? So if you open your textbook and read about negligence, it will tell you negligence is four elements: duty of care, breach of duty of care, harm, and causation. That's what it'll write there. And that's not wrong, okay? It's just useless. Because if students write that out, what they will then do is do what they do with the intentional torts, and they will ask these as questions. Was there duty of care? That is not a question that you can be answered. So it's not that these are wrong, they are useless. And I don't want to see them on your test. I won't take away marks if they're there, because they're not wrong, okay? But I don't want to see them, because as soon as I do see them, I worry that you're going to then translate those into questions like you did there and end up with, was there a duty of care? And then the only thing you could probably put is, yes, there was a duty of care, because you have no idea what it means, right? So if you wrote, what I'm telling you to do is, instead of writing this, I want you to write this. It's really what that means. So I want you to do it. And you're going to have a chance to practice doing this, because I'm going to give you homework, which is go back to that case, especially if you haven't done this before, especially if you didn't do your last homework, okay? Especially if that happened. Do this. And do the homework on the intentional torts and the unintentional torts. And Ben, you pointed out something in the break, which is there are a bunch of them, okay? The deal is this: you never have to do more than 5 of any particular tort. So how many is the most you would have to do for that assignment?
35.
35. 7 torts, no more than 5. If you can do it 5 times, you can do it 6. I don't need you to do it 6. Okay? And I don't even suggest you do it 5. But don't do it more than 5. You should try and do it more than once, though. And it's not that hard when you start to see it. And what I want to do next week, and we're not leaving yet because I've still got tons to do, okay? But what I want to do next week is walk you through some of these and show you how you can do them. And it's so important that you've tried it so that you can start comparing what you did to what I'm suggesting and see how close you are. And then by seeing, oh man, I didn't do that very good, then you're going to go, I can fix that for the exam. Or you say, hey man, I did that exactly right. That's perfect. And then you've got nice confidence for the exam. Okay? But if you show up and watch, you will definitely think you can do it, because it's easy to watch it. Okay? And when you have to do it, what I find is students that haven't done the homework just don't know how. Even though they think they do, because they saw it. I should really get you to do that as an assignment and hand it in, and then give you no marks for it. Never work, eh? Okay. So, there's a couple more things we have to deal with respect to negligence. And the first of them is the specific defenses. Negligence has 2 specific defenses that I want you to deal with. And we're also going to break a rule. I'm going to undo something I told you before. What's the first general defense that I taught you? And what did I tell you about general defenses? They applied all torts. We're going to break that rule. So if we go back to Tia and the flaming marker example, how could she consent?
By coming to your classroom when she knows you do radical things.
So I had 2 people answering. Ben, what did you say?
By coming to your classroom when she knows you do radical things.
So is that informed? This.
If you have a pattern of behavior like this, maybe.
So let's use something else that's a little more distant so you can understand the point. Remember your people texting and driving?
Yes.
When you run into someone, because you're a moron, you're texting and driving, can you ever say that, oh, they consented to it? Why would they not be able to consent to it?
Because they don't know you are driving.
And you didn't know it either, did you? You didn't know that you were going to have an accident, did you? So if you don't even know you're going to have an accident, how could they possibly know that you were going to have an accident and agree to it? So because negligence is unintentional, there's no real way for consent to actually work. It just won't. It'd have to be informed. How can it be informed? You don't even know what's going to happen, right? So you have a problem with consent and negligence. They just don't work together. And this is why we... Go ahead.
But could you argue that by putting yourself in a car, you know that harm could happen to you? So basically, if someone's texting and driving, you're consenting to being aware that you could get hurt.
You don't sue yourself, though.
Yeah, I know, but you could sue them.
So if I'm driving along in a car and you're texting and driving, can you say, I consented to having you run into me because I know you people text and drive?
But the person texting and driving could say that.
But they're going to be the defendant, not the plaintiff. You see that?
Yeah.
You see that? You don't sue yourself, right? So you're the defendant, right? I'm suing you, and then you've got to say, you consented to that, Murray. There's no way I could consent to it. And the fact that I know people are texting and driving, does that mean I consent to them being running in? Oh, sorry, yeah, you must be texting and driving, eh? That's okay. I guess I consent to that when I go. It doesn't work, right? And that's the problem with negligence. Consent really doesn't work for negligence. And that's why there's a substitute test. It actually is meant to go in the place of consent. And it's called voluntary assumption of risk. And you're going to see how high this hurdle is, how hard it is to prove this defense. It's very difficult. So, to have voluntary assumption of risk, the defendant has to show that the plaintiff knew it was virtually inevitable that they were going to be hurt. And they said it's okay. So let me give you an example, okay? Let's say that you go and you decide to go bungee jumping from Murray's Bungee Jumping Company, right? We're going to talk about Murray's Bungee Jumping Company maybe a little later. So Murray's Bungee Jumping Company. And what happens is, I found these elastic bands that are used to seal pipes together, and instead of buying proper things, because they're really expensive, those ones that people use, right? They cost quite a bit of money. So I bought these cheap ones, and I tell you, hey, they could break. Have I gone far enough? Are you informed that it is virtually inevitable? What I have to show is those things have broken every time someone's gone, and if you use them, it's probably going to break for you too. Maybe not, but it's probably going to happen. And you're going to go plunging to your death. Are you okay with that? And you go, yeah, sure. Been a bad day. Right? Who would ever agree to the virtual inevitability of harm? Another example. It says no one's allowed in the shop, and somebody goes to the shop and the hoist drops. Can you say that they knew that it was going to happen, virtually inevitable? No. You have to say, hey, our hoists are not that great. We really need to have it fixed. They will suddenly drop, and they will kill people underneath. Our mechanics are pissed. Okay? But if you go out there and look at your car, it's almost inevitable that it's going to happen to you when you're underneath it, so you shouldn't go there. And say, well, I want to look anyways. You'd have to be jaw-droppingly stupid to ever agree to that. But that is the level you have to get to show this defense. It is almost impossible. That's called voluntary assumption of risk. The next defense. Oh, I should tell you the story first. I'd have to tell you the story at some point. I think I should tell it to you first, so you can understand how this works. So, there was a party. Have I told you this before about the party? The old folks' party? Okay. So, how many of you have been to a party with a bunch of other people? A pretty good social gathering in the last 6 months. Okay? How many of you were at one and it was a little wild? Anybody been at a little excited? Anybody? Anybody have one of them? No? We should. Maybe after class. Right? All right. So I want you to imagine that there's that type of party, okay? And because how many of you ever been to one of them that it was wild? Okay? Been to one. Who hasn't? Who's never been to a wild one? Never? Never? They're a little wild. Okay, I remember one with the South African doctors. Holy, you wouldn't believe that. The morning we all end up with acupuncture needles sticking out of everywhere. It was a little wild. All right, so African doctors. Where'd go? So anyways, there was this party wasn't like that. This party was not a wild party. How many of you have parents and they have parties? Have gatherings, have people over. Anybody have that? Okay, those aren't that exciting, are they? Do they go, can I stay home with you tonight? It looks like so much fun. Is that, how many of you don't do that when your parents? Okay, why not? Because they're not that exciting. So this was a parent party, folks. It was a boring party. And they had like themselves and maybe 3 other couples, 6 people there, right? And they were having some drinks and they were sitting around. And these people were fairly well off. And they had a pool. But it was fall, okay? And what happened is these people, later on in the evening, one of them realized that you could climb up on the fence and climb up on the roof. And then run along the roof and jump in the pool. Okay? You understand what's happening? So, one of them goes and does that. It goes, hee, 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 and splash. And then somebody else says, hey, that looks like fun. I think I'll try. And next thing you know, several of the guests are climbing up on the roof, running along it, and jumping in the pool. The problem was, it was fall. And they had already prepared the pool for winter. Do you know how you prepare a pool for winter, folks? Anybody know what you do? Do you fully drain it?
Yeah.
No, you don't. Because no. This is Canada. It freezes, right? And actually, we don't want it to. So no, we don't. They usually half it so it has room to expand and contract, but they don't fully drain it. So the pool is effectively half of the pool. It was half full, but there was enough for people to jump in. And the owners of the house were going, get down from there. Do not go up on the roof. It's dangerous. Someone's going to get hurt. Come back inside. We've got snacks. Okay? Don't up there. Ha 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 splash. Ha 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 splash. Right? Come inside. We don't want to have to call the police. You must come inside right now. Ha 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 splash. And then one guy decided to dive in the pool that was half full of water. And as a result of that, they went right to the bottom, hit their head, broke their neck, and they were left quadriplegic. They sued the homeowners.
Why?
Well, let's walk our way through this, folks. First question we need to determine is, would they be suing for an intentional tort or an unintentional tort? So they didn't do this on purpose, the homeowners, right? In fact, they were doing quite a bit to prevent it, right? So, if you're suing for an unintentional tort, what you need is a choice. You need something to put right here. What did they put there? What's the choice?
Empty the pool, half drain the pool.
So, can you foresee that if they half drain the pool, someone can get hurt? That's iffy. But if we get to the next thing, what would a reasonable person do with their pool in the winter? What?
They winterize it.